I will just speak if that's okay.
Oh, you're just going to speak. Okay, so that's fine. We've nothing to do. Great. Thank you very much, Felix.
Okay. Wow, now I see all the pictures. That's great. Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much to the Funded Support Unit for having invited me to speak to you. As Monica said, I'm Felix Leinemann. With my team, I'm working on a sustainable blue economy in Europe at DG MARE in the European Commission. The past 2 years have certainly taught every one of us what it means to be resilient. And if you are here, that means you have really shown resilience throughout these past 2 years. From a political perspective, the EU has responded in unprecedented terms. It has agreed the so-called Recovery and Resilience Fund with up to 750 billion euros, which comes in addition to the normal EU budget. And this budget is spent based on programs that are devised by member states and then agreed by the Commission. We have been screening member states' plans, and many recovery and resilience plans of coastal states include substantial investments into a sustainable blue economy. That is about 10.5 billion or 1.5% of the total Recovery and Resilience Fund budget. To give you a few examples, Belgium, Cyprus, Greece, France, Italy, Poland, Portugal, Spain have quite sizable blue economy investments. And that goes into greening and innovating fisheries and aquaculture sectors, into reinforcing marine biodiversity, conservation and restoration actions, or in effective management and control systems for marine protected areas. It goes in restoration of wetlands, river systems, in wastewater treatment, coastal adaptation measures, flood protection, offshore energy parks, upgrading of port infrastructure, coastal tourism, greening, digitalization of ports and shipyards, green shipping. I could go on, but these are just some examples of how many different activities there are in a sustainable blue economy. Of course, for the resilience, communities have been essential and are essential. And that takes into account, from a policy perspective, that about 1/3 of the entire population of the European Union lives within 50 kilometers of the coast. More than 200 million citizens live in coastal regions or on one of Europe's many islands. So this is why the European Commission adopted in May this year what it called a new approach to a sustainable blue economy. And an entire chapter of that is dedicated to coastal resilience. The Commission believes that a sustainable blue economy will create tangible opportunities for new jobs and businesses and communities. They will be created by work to mitigate the impacts on oceans and coasts, to build a resilient economic model that is based on innovation, a circular economy, and a respectful attitude to our seas. And that means that businesses and communities that use or generate renewable resources, preserve marine ecosystems, reduce pollution, and increase resilience to climate change will be incentivized, while others will need to reduce their environmental footprint. Here, of course, we are talking about resilience at an even bigger scale, not to say planetary scale. Namely, how to protect our natural and economic assets and infrastructure. And that means we need to adapt to the inevitable consequences of climate change. You will look at environmental resilience during your seminar. As an alternative, for example, to building yet more grey infrastructure like dams, dikes, or concrete barriers, climate adaptation should be based on natural and nature-based solutions. Wetlands such as salt marshes, seagrass fields, mangroves in areas outside geographical Europe, and dunes, for example. And in coastal regions, developing green infrastructure will help preserve biodiversity, coastal ecosystems and landscapes, and strengthen the development of sustainable tourism and of the economy of coastal regions. We think that these adaptation activities will become a new sector of the blue economy in its own right. So what the Commission wants to do is to stimulate cooperation between coastal regions and islands that share common needs in the same sea basin, to develop their adaptation strategies and joint approaches. What the Sustainable Blue Economy communication of the Commission also says is that if we look at the blue economy as such, we need to transform entire value chains in the blue economy. And I can see 4 main value chains. One is decarbonization, another one, biodiversity and coastal resilience, a third one, responsible food systems, and a fourth, circularity. If we look at decarbonization, we need to explore the full potential of offshore renewable energy. And I saw in the program that you're looking at how coastal communities can benefit from renewable energies and can really tap into that. This is something that is very important for the transition to a cleaner Europe and also to a less emitting Europe. Biodiversity, coastal resilience, I think I already mentioned the protection and restoration of coastal ecosystems, the investment in nature-based solutions, and really valuing that natural capital by promoting sustainable tourism. If we look at food systems, of course, we need to meet the sustainability standards of the common fisheries policy. We need to implement our strategic guidelines for aquaculture. And we need to invest more in something that the Commission will come up with next year, a dedicated initiative to algae, be it the work for microalgae or macroalgae like seaweed and etc. So need to look at responsible food systems. And then the fourth that I mentioned, circularity. We need to get rid of microplastics, macroplastics in the environment. We need to invest in the circular design of fishing gears, in collecting, cleaning beaches and plastics, and developing recycling facilities, not just for ships or recreational boats, but also for offshore platforms, wind farms, etc. So this was really to give a bit of an overview of the broader policy picture that the Commission laid out in the course of this year. But I can imagine that you're also interested in how we are now progressing with the national programs of the European Maritime, Fisheries and Aquaculture Fund. And as head of unit for aquaculture, I'm particularly pleased about the new A in the fund, I must say. MFAF, we now say. So overall, the programming process is advancing. And in most cases, there have been considerable exchanges during the past few months between member state programming authorities and the European Commission. We have received advanced informal drafts from the majority of member states. And in quite a number of cases, exchanges between DG MARE and the managing authorities in member states have led to submissions of quite mature informal drafts. So we are now going to get the formal drafts, which are then going to be approved. And such a process is very important to ensure that we have a smooth transition between the funding periods, so that we don't lose the capacity and motivation that has been built on the ground, to ensure that flags can be selected and ready to operate, not only within 12 months of the adoption of the program, as is stated in the Common Provision Regulations, but also as soon as possible after all their running costs from 2014 to 2020 have been used. So that means as soon as possible. Aside from a smooth financial transition, of course, a key factor for community-led local development is people. And I'm very pleased to be here and see so many faces, and I'm grateful that you've left on your camera, because often on these occasions I have to talk to just a screen that doesn't show faces. So thanks a lot for that. The people behind each flag and their local development strategy are the most important resource that community-led local development relies upon. Because the work of a fisheries local action group, of a flag, goes beyond simply selecting projects and delivering grants. The true added value lies in its dedicated team that can generate ideas, that can mobilize other community members to launch projects that would not happen with a traditional top-down approach to socio-economic development. And this is why it's important that you discuss resilience amongst yourselves also, and that you manage to mobilize people to come up with their own ideas from a bottom-up perspective. So this is why it's really important and fundamental that you ensure that the right team is in place. And I see many of you that have been in the right team for quite a while now. Now, under the European Maritime, Fisheries and Aquaculture Fund, community-led local development has a blue economy focus. So we're looking beyond the more traditional forms of exploitation. We're also looking at them, like fishing and aquaculture. That's, of course, still a key activity. But if we take a broader vision of the blue economy, that can offer important sources of sustainable economic development for member states and for coastal communities in particular. I mentioned a few examples already from the Recovery and Resilience Funds, but thanks to the diversity, the dynamism, and the innovation potential of the blue economy, it can contribute significantly to the objectives of the European Green Deal and all policies and initiatives that fall under the European Green Deal. Like if we look at, in our area, at the farm to fork strategy, or from net to pen, from pen to plate, and at the EU offshore renewable energy strategy. For example, the latter wants to prepare Europe to be ready for offshore wind and other offshore renewable technologies, and it proposes to increase the offshore wind capacity of Europe from the current level of 12 gigawatt to at least 60 gigawatt by 2030 and to 300 gigawatt by 2050. That will mean a massive increase, and that will mean a lot of changes for coastal communities. So coastal communities attempt to adapt to new pressures posed by climate change, but at the same time, such a strategy should create opportunities for more innovation, for startup growth. Community-led local development is well placed to demonstrate that transitioning to sustainability is possible, while you still offer high-quality jobs and prosperity for local communities. Now, this is the last seminar of the current farming contract, and I would like to use this opportunity to thank all of you in the flags, but also especially in the FARNET support unit. On behalf of all colleagues in DG MARE with whom you have been working very closely over the past years, for your hard work and for sharing your experience and openly discussing strengths and weaknesses of your delivery systems. Community-led local development cannot exist without cooperation between all the people involved in its implementation. And that's very important here. Under the European Maritime and Fisheries Fund, the implementation of community-led local development will be supported again by our technical assistance, as was the case for the EMFF. But because it's a new program, there is a new open call that we published during the summer, and we hope to select soon a new contractor, so to avoid any gaps between the two periods. With this, I would like to conclude and wish you a successful seminar. I think the program that has been drafted is quite comprehensive and will lead you through all the depths of resilience, even if you have probably made your own experiences over the past years and you've come through them. So I wish you all the best for the seminar and all the best also for the next programming period. I hope to see you again soon. Thank you. I'm still here for questions, if there are any questions from people in the audience.